throughout the country. We had substantial amount of people have health issues from it and unfortunately passed away due to this pandemic. But there was also a lot of, political and racial divides within society. And it was a very challenging and stressful time. I think a lot of people's physical health aside, mental health has really taken a hit last year. And hopefully now we're on a better path, better trajectory, as we like to say, the light at the end of the tunnel. You posted up on Facebook during this time a really strong message about the challenges that you faced throughout your career and that you still face even as the head of a several $100 million real estate development. And I know I commented on it, and it really struck me both professionally and especially personally. If you could talk more about your feelings on that, talk about kind of like your career and some of the challenges that you faced, continue to face, and and how that ultimately has played into kind of like your take and leadership style.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thank you for setting this up. I think it's really exciting. And thank you for the town of Babylon wanting to participate in this as well. So Councilman, the conversation and the reason why I posted that on Facebook was so that we can actually engage in conversation. I think as much as our friends and very close friends, race has been taboo for good reason, but it's been so taboo that everyone has brushed over it historically. Everyone really kind of, even greatest of friends didn't talk about race and the issues in race and what is it like to be you, like walk a mile in your shoes conversation. I think it's very important for me to have the conversation with you, Councilman, and with mayors and governors and legislators so that they understand what really needs to be changed. Because if you haven't walked in my shoes, and kind of during the Obama administration era, it seemed like everything was really great, but it was because it was so suppressed and it was so taboo. It looked like everything was great because we glossed over, really the underlying issues that exist. If you know what it's really like to sit in my shoes, you would be very willing, like you're saying, as you are moved, to be helpful as a partner would be to help change it, because it's just, there are things that are just improper in society, and society has over time rooted them out. This is one of those things that we just need to continue to root out. And I'm excited to talk about how it affected, yes, my life from being a child, because you run into it, as in my post and my written published narrative on that, all the way through, whether it's you're overlooked for things in business, or I can tell you stories about even our deal in Hempstead, where when we got to credit committee, people that lived on Long Island said we'd never receive $1,200 a month for rent in a major US bank. And my rents in Hempstead are $1,700 right now. So not only was credit committee wrong, that's an individual person's expectations of a particular type of people. And I think that is where we need to help to transform, change the dynamic, and look forward to great partners like you to help then drive major institutions to change the way they work with Black businesses.
Yeah, that that's spot on. That's spot on. I think, like you just said, there those underlying issues that are there, have to continuously be brought out to the forefront, and not only when they're recognized, actually make meaningful change and solutions to drive that change.
Yes.
Because anybody can talk about, all the greatest things in the world, and we could put up all the presentations we want and talk about it ad nauseum, but we really need to start making, those changes. And I think we're starting to see incremental change because people, are starting to have, the awakening to seeing and learning and hearing about the experiences that do exist, and they need to be changed. And what you're doing and the leadership that you're bringing to the table and paving the way, and we could kind of transition now to talk a little bit about your project in the city of Baltimore is just unbelievable. It's
Thank you.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable that a transformation like that could happen. And I'd really love to learn a little bit more about how you worked with the community, what the community's initial reaction was,
Yes.
fast forwarding to what their reaction is today. Dan, if you can put up the PowerPoint, share your screen, that would be great. And we can kind of walk through some of this. So if you want to just talk a little bit about Center West and a little bit about the demographics of the community and the neighborhood and your approach and how everything's going.
Sure. So Center West, when we arrived 17 years ago, looked exactly like the images that you'll see. The red house with the roof is actually Edgar Allan Poe's house and museum, where we all have read The Raven or The Telltale Heart. That's where he did it, which is really pretty amazing. But then right outside the door, if you look to the left, and there's an image of myself and a gentleman named Eric Holcomb. That was what was across the street. So the Edgar Allan Poe House and Museum actually closed as a national museum because people were petrified to get out in the neighborhood. And if you go to the next slide, you'll start to see what this neighborhood really looked like. It was that, remember that movie? There was a movie, Escape from New York.
Yeah.
It resembles that, the burnt out portion of the Bronx, the burnt out portion of Harlem, the burnt out portion of Brooklyn, you kind of name it. And these neighborhoods were really filled with this, where it was dilapidated, burnt down, had already crumbled, were demolished and left vacant with overgrowing trees. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So as you could see on the left-hand side, if you watch the TV show The Wire, there was a portion of them that there are episodes that focused on tattooing of buildings. And you could see this is an actual live photo from 17 years ago. It says Rip Green, and then it's too small to read, but literally down the street were people that were unfortunately murdered right on this corner. And these were someone's family members or friends or sisters and brothers, that literally this is how this neighborhood looked.
And
So when we arrived, it was also during that portion of time where the drug dealers, since these houses cost nothing, these were all worth like $5,000 for an entire house. They would buy the vacant houses so that they knew who was calling the police on them. So relatively smart strategy if you're a drug dealer, awful strategy for society. And this is what we walked into. And our goal as a Black company was to help transform, and we've done this historically in different areas, in Harlem, in throughout all of New York City, in Hempstead, where we've helped to reposition neighborhoods by creation of opportunities. But when we first arrived, we were the outsider, right? I'm from New York, and I was coming down to a totally different city.
from New York, strike one.
Yeah, yeah, it's like 1 to a million. But you know, at first it was really interesting, because Mason-Dixon line and all that other funny stuff that we heard about in our in our history books actually really played itself out in how we arrived in Baltimore, because as this was a Black neighborhood, the people who didn't want us to win the RFP after we did win it, went around to the neighborhood and promoted that we were a white developer. So all the Black people were really upset that they thought that they were going to be removed, and this white developer was going to sweepingly make changes to them and kick them out of their neighborhood, and then transform into a neighborhood that looks nothing like the place where they have lived for generations. So it was interesting, Councilman, getting people to believe and trust, and that we were a different type of developer. So we met with lots of people. I've done dozens upon dozens of community meetings. I've done more community meetings in Baltimore on my birthday than I've done anywhere else, just because it happened to be, and I was completely fine with how I approached it. but people appreciated the fact that typically on their birthday they took off, and here I am standing in front of 50 people getting grilled for hours on my birthday, and that's how I decided to spend it. So I've made some really great friends, some great friends with community leaders here, um, and we were able to talk to them about real estate. Real estate as a business that is supposed to help you increase your wealth, not decrease your wealth. So at $5,000, you can't do anything. Thank you. Um, you can't really sell it to anybody. Your closing costs would be too great. Um, and you could just see that, would you even buy this for $5,000? And the answer is probably very few people would want to subject themselves and their family to a neighborhood that looked like this. But a lot of this came from an era that was driving, through just different policies that unfortunately ended up at our doorstep, which is, Iran-Contra affair, which then brought crack into Black communities, which brought guns and violence. And when you have mind-altering drugs, people do things that are not what they would normally do. Um, and so these communities were abandoned and left. So when we arrived, there was more than 50 years of disinvestment. So it's when I won this project with my partners, I was in my mid 30s. So when you hear that, so longer than you were alive, people were running from and you were losing value in a community, it's heartbreaking.
Mm.
Uh, and how can we effectively change this and bring in capital to make transformative change? Um, that is really the key. And the key stems from leadership and being willing to talk to your partners, your bankers about why this is important, getting everyone to buy into that vision, and having the community buy into the vision, because you create jobs and opportunities, you create, value in homes, you create a neighborhood that becomes stabilized, and that's
And,
where.
and Center West Development is a mixed use project.
Yes, it is. It's an 80-20. So part of the conversation, yes, you can go to the next slide because you'll see what Center West really started to look like and what this neighborhood has transformed into. So it was important for us, for people that were relocated, and it's in all of our documents, that they had first right of refusal to come back to the neighborhood. We built it 80-20 so that we could share in what is going to be new. What is it really going to look like? How does this effectively change your life? Just relocating people and sticking people in a different place is really just recreating the same thing that you just left, which is terrible, from a construct perspective. Um, we have always believed that to fix the social ailments actually will allow people to grow. So now, under the 80-20 model, for which I've lived in for the past year, I should have said that, you get to live next to developers, lawyers, biotech professionals. So if you're a part of the affordable housing component, you now have access to a whole scale of people that you, your family, your kids might not have ever had an opportunity to meet. And that creates the ability for you, jobs and opportunity. Why do you go to school? You go to school because you can really transform and be something that you never even knew existed. But now you live next to somebody that does it. So if you scroll to the next slide.
That's a great perspective
Thank you.
that I don't think many people think about.
Yeah, Councilman, when we sit around as a team and talk about this, and some of our partners are Susan Taylor from Essence Magazine, and Malik Yoba, and kind of some really, really great, celebrities, as well as really thoughtful individual human beings. It's really, we have to change society from a social perspective. And that's how we will become successful. So this whole imagery is what's live and on the ground right now. This is Center West. These are the first two buildings out of 3.2 million square feet and 14 acres that we will completely redevelop and transform how people live. So new sidewalks. It's such a telling and touching story, where I've had people cry in my arms that, Dan, you're the first person to line streets so our kids knew where they're supposed to cross the street. paint doesn't cost anything, right? Right. It's, from a city budget perspective, and the billions of dollars in tax revenue, and I get that everything has a cost and every nickel does add up. But for you to not have lined streets in 50 something years is a shocking tale. So it was important for us to help elevate even the surrounding neighborhood for what is really coming. We've created at least a half dozen corporations that are not ours, that other people asked. So we hired a former police officer who created a security company, who hired people from the neighborhood that then became our security guards, instead of hiring just some enormous security company that had no real relationship to. So it allowed money to stay inside of the community, which is also really exciting for us. So the change is holistic throughout the community. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So you could see, we also put this door system called Latch. Latch is incredible. There's really no key, even though there's a key in the door, and that's the fail safe for if something totally technologically fails. But you have an app on your phone. You walk around all the doors you're allowed to get into. The phone app will let you in instantly. It takes a photo of you. It logs every photo. It tells you every place you've been. So the doors and the doorknobs are $500 a doorknob. So I talked to councilmen down in Baltimore. I said, if the kids from the neighborhood were that bad, those security guards would have had my $500 doorknobs and nothing was missing. Forget the $500 doorknobs. Those kids were so happy to have an opportunity that they became, real like friends of ours, just because they were so excited. They told everything. They made sure that their friends understood and their parents understood what was in the neighborhood and what was coming. So as you see, we've done Tesla charging spaces, rooftop terraces and lounges, and our swimming pool is salt water. So we spent real good money. If you could go to the next slide, please. So once again, there's the red roof with Edgar Allan Poe's house. And this is what it looks like now. Joining into the community perspective, this pathway originally didn't have those the tan colored bricks in it. We went to the Edgar Allan Poe house because it's only $5 to tour. But you can imagine, that's how do you pay salaries on $5 tours of Edgar Allan Poe's house? It's really difficult. So we gave them the opportunity to sell pavers and put them in kind of, I know different author, but it was like our concept of the yellow brick road, right? So here you go, you're gonna go see the wizard named Edgar Allan Poe, but here is the yellow brick road. And they made, tens of thousands of dollars selling pavers, which have people's names in them. So
Very cool.
thank you. So yeah, you could keep scrolling and you could see different portions of Center West and how it looks at sunrise. That's actually a sunrise photo. Awards, we just won ULI 2020 Wavemaker Award, and we also won for 2020 the Changemaker Award, and both are neighborhood revitalization awards. So we won both of those. The other one was from Delta and Associates. And then we sponsored the Edgar Allan Poe Festival. So if there's anyone watching from Baltimore, they know the West Side has historically been known as, you get to MLK Boulevard, you make a left and go onto the highway. Don't go any further. We're on the west side of MLK. So when we were talking to Rika, who was at the Poe Festival, and she's the executive director of Edgar Allan Poe's house, we were talking about a festival, inside or outside. It was important for me to have it outside to prove the point that this is a neighborhood that is accepting of all people, all walks of life. This sits right next to the Poe Homes, which is a low-income Section 8 housing that the Housing Authority owns. But this imagery was so important for us because we wanted to prove that this is a safe neighborhood for everyone to be in. There was not a single incident, not a boo, not a purse missing, not a window broken, and all of these people came to this festival from as far as Australia.
Wow.
So it shows the dynamic pull of Edgar Allan Poe. So this is what we bring to neighborhoods, and this is what's exciting to bring to neighborhoods. These are inside unit photos of what we really built. So really large scale units, some from studios to 3 bedrooms. And as you can see, we're Energy Star at 93, so our energy bills are, call it $50 a month. Um, so they're really low cost energy bills, which are all technically pass-throughs to the residents, who typically in their houses saw $300 to $500 a month energy bills. So you can see swimming pools, planted rooftops. Um, so this is Center West.
That's beautiful.
Thank
And,
you.
and so how has this, this redevelopment, that really, like I just said, is beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
How has it impacted? I know you said before, the average value of a house, has, over the years deteriorated, down to, $5,000 for a home.
Yes.
How has this property development impacted home values around the community?
So the community's home values went from $5,000 to $275,000 just with the 2 first buildings going up.
Hold on, repeat that one more time.
From 5,000 to $275,000.
That's amazing.
And what's exciting to me is and there's a bunch of residents that I know most of them actually. And this one particular woman came to me quietly without her husband, who's a bus driver for the city of Baltimore. And she said, "Dan, our house is only worth $5,000. My husband is a bus driver. We have a small pension. We really need help. We're in our 70s, our mid 70s. Like I want him to be able to retire." And I told and explained to them real estate, why this entire deal is going to transform their ability to retire. And now they couldn't even refinance to put to fix a leaky roof. So they just had a tarp over their roof. So we were able to show them and the entire neighborhood, people that were looking to leave and they were just going to dump their house to, the guys with cash that run around into developments. And we talked to them and said, "Do not sell your house. Please don't. It would be painful to me to watch you walk away for 10 grand. And then these guys with the cash then made 275 on 10 grand, which the return is through the roof." They all listened to me. And they all are so thankful. So we actually just solved the food desert. As of 2 weeks ago, we signed a grocery store lease now.
Oh, awesome.
So we're super excited. So now these neighbors who are also in their 70s and 80s no longer have to try to figure out how to get to the grocery store, hire expensive Ubers, just wasting capital even on gas. They could just walk down the street now. So the grocery store is really exciting for us as well. So neighborhood transformation is the name of the game for where we're going.
You shared with me a story that I'd like to hear again, about the group that you toured that were part of the March on Washington.
Yeah, so it was a group of ladies, and they were from 70 to 90 years old, and there was 7 or 8 of them, and they wanted to come over and find out, because they'd never met me before, who this developer was, and they wanted to tour the building because they wanted to move out of their old dilapidated housing into something new. And the conversation on the March on Washington started as we were doing our tour, and my parents also met at the March on Washington, and obviously ultimately get married.
Wow. That's cool.
Within 3 dates. I don't know how they did that and pulled it off. But literally these women marched from Baltimore to Washington, and literally from a perspective of someone who's a Black business owner, they have allowed me to, all of them, my parents and all these ladies and this whole group demographically allowed me to step on their shoulders, which is, if they didn't do and go through the March on Washington, Dan isn't really created, because so many civil rights movements have come out of the March on Washington and fixing laws and opportunities. I wouldn't be here even having this conversation with you if they weren't there for me to stand on their shoulders. And this is how the conversation is, obviously I'm surmising it, but but it's how this actually took place. And when we got to the units and we toured the amenities portion of the amenity space first, and we got to the units, these women were sobbing. They were sobbing. They cried for a good 5 minutes. And and to to give them their space, we talked through, individual washers and dryers in units, which they never experienced before. And so when we get through all of how beautiful the space is, they said, we never expected in our life to even see something this beautiful, no less be able to live in something this beautiful. So think about how powerful that 80/20 model is now, right? You just talked about an end of life you didn't expect to ever see, minus, things on television or on Twitter or Instagram of people's lives. But for you to physically walk in and then that to be your house, and you never expected to ever even see it, no less be able to live there. It's a really powerful and touching portion. My property management team was bawling in the back. They were trying to keep their corporate hat on, and they were all in the back, like wiping their eyes, which I understand. But that's the importance of why Black businesses that go into Black communities are really important, because they can understand that struggle. They can understand why it's important for them to create housing like this, like Center West, which is right next to the University of Maryland. It's biotech park. It's right adjacent to downtown Central Business District. But it's a community that many of us that are Black have watched, your family members, even if you didn't particularly grow up in, you have family members that have grown up in this community. So it's heartfelt for us to grow and to transform this. So yeah, thank you for asking about it.
Yeah, and what's to come for the development? Like, what phase are you in, and what's next?
So we've built roughly, it's 250 to 300,000 square feet. We entitled 3.2 million square feet. We have blocks and blocks and blocks to build. So we've signed a second lease with the grocer. So the first grocer is their express store. So it'll still have all the same fresh groceries that they'll have in their main store, but we could only pull together 8,000 square feet by merging two of our parcels together for them, because our lobby then comes and then two more commercial parcels sit beside it. But they're going to increase to 25,000 square feet in our next building phase. So that will be 600 units of housing. So 400 units of 80/20 regular, 200 units of senior housing, Councilman. So the senior housing piece is meant to also help seniors have a place where they can go to sleep at night. They go to sleep earlier than, let's say, the normal regular 80/20 housing. So it allow them a place to sleep, but it's not putting them in a place where they feel like they're surrounded by kind of everyone who's on a older, getting older portion of their life. So they'll have all of around the swimming pools and roof terraces, the opportunity to interact with everybody. But when they want to go to bed at 6:30 and we're up to 10:30 still working on spreadsheets and making noise, it allows them a place where they can go to sleep at night comfortably.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So I know, some of the Facebook feedback that I got, I saw, whether it be comments or likes, were from a lot of Black entrepreneurs and small business owners and prospective small business owners.
Yes.
I think, your path to success and what you've been able to achieve is admirable. And, I would love to hear, if you can impart some advice to, startup businesses, entrepreneurs, and folks that are looking to start a business. Any advice you want to lend or leadership thoughts, I think would be wonderful.
Sure. Business is a very interesting place to be when you're at the leadership level and the ownership level. I think for me, I talked about before birthdays, I didn't actually take, right? I didn't plan a birthday party, a birthday month, a birthday week. It's because I have a business to run and it's all encompassing. So understanding what you're going to dive into is actually really important. Um, and you have to be committed, and your partners have to be committed, because when hiccups happen, as they all will, you're going to need your partners to be there to help. And whether that's financially, whether it's just extra brain power, whether it's extra time on Excel or marketing material, you have to really have a team that is willing and committed. Um, and we have gone through quite a few partners because they weren't as committed. We've gone through quite a few employees because you need all of it. This is not to tell you not to do it. This is actually just informing you what is to come. It's exciting. It's very exciting to be there. The stressful moments are a million times more stressful than having just a job, because it's yours. It's your baby. It's your money. Your everything.
Yeah, you just you have such a more heightened sense of responsibility. I, as a entrepreneur, myself, one of the things I say is like, I'm proud that in all these years, I never missed a payroll, right? You have to always make sure your employees are paid before you do. Your mortgage might be due, but guess what? The staff and the employees come first.
Yeah, because without them, you can't do the lift yourself. So you have to make payroll. Um, it's definitely an important piece of understanding to be conservative. Um, Everyone, when they first start out in business, believes that this is this path to having unfettered amount of cash. That is not the case. It's not the case at all. It's because when the hiccups come, you plow it all back in, right? You don't walk away because that'll be your last rodeo. And no different than Hollywood, you're only as good as your last rodeo. So all your bankers are going to look back to your last rodeo. So make sure that you have, when you do and when you're successful, make money, to plow away a reserve for the rainy day fund and make it a big reserve. And with that being said, it's also really important to understand, racism does play a role. Everyone talks about institutionalized racism. It does exist. Obviously, we've all seen it on television, but it's the reason why people use the word institutionalized is because it's through all branches of government. So whether it's local or federal or state, it then spawns into big corporations, into banking, into law firms. So when you think into not-for-profits, even, right? When people hire individuals, you're hoping that they are going to do the right thing. You don't know exactly what they do behind closed doors when they go home, what their Twitter account is. And when they show up and they become your boss or a decision maker for your business, and they're on a committee that says whether or not you get a loan or not, then it becomes a real problem. So this is the what you have to watch out for as a business, but why you need great partners like Councilman Manetta, who's interested in growing Black businesses, and because you're going to need great people, great allies like him. And there are tons of them. I have, without my friends who are part of the majority, there would be no me, because their access to capital has existed for generations, right? It's called generational wealth for a reason. And as the banking industry and the Senate and Congress have become more restrictive, and Black businesses are now only really starting to get their foot in the door from a major, large scale basis, hurdles are much greater. So now you have to have all of these multiples on liquidity, all these multiples on worth and value. So your partners have to be the ones that are either helping show up with that, or how you get to joint venture. So it's be careful of your partners. We've definitely bought out our fair share of partners over time, but it's really important to embark on this mission, because you don't want your kids to sit around having the same conversation that we're having right now. You want them to be significantly further ahead, and looking back at this conversation, this Facebook conversation with the councilman and myself, to say, oh, that was really helpful to me and my family. And this is what we've been able to achieve in one generation. So take this as a light at the end of the tunnel for you, that if there's a me, there can be a you. If there's a me, understanding how and how Councilman Manetta even became friends is really a godsend, because you need it all. You need everything to become successful. You need the government to be on your side as an ally. You don't need them to be adversarial towards you. So that would be my my slight description on
No, that
that.
is that is great. And I want to thank you, for participating today, for your friendship, for your leadership, for the vision and the execution of that vision to revitalize an entire community, giving people greater opportunities, increasing property values, and not just giving hope, but actually delivering on it.
Thank you.
So Dan, you're incredible. Thank you for participating today. I don't know if you have any, final thoughts, but now's the time to do it.
um, Keep striving. It's a lot of work. It is a lot. It will be a lot of work, but you have to have the fortitude and the willingness to. I call it playing chess, because it is. If you make one move in one direction, there's always a counter move coming in the other. So understand your chess moves, so that when you do put your pawn out to be taken by the queen, your rook can take the queen. That's my phone. Thank you.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, I'm Councilman Anthony Manetta with the Town of Babylon. If there's anything that comes up that you might need, I'm also the chairman of the Small Business Committee, so feel free to reach out. Thanks again.
Thank you.